The nation of Israel has left Egypt behind. Not just physically now, but emotionally and spiritually, they have left Egypt behind. And now they're leaving the desert behind, and they're about to enter into the land that God has promised to give them. Now understand this, although this is a land flowing with milk and honey, taking this land is not going to be a bed of roses. If it were easy, if the task was easy, then Joshua would have simply gathered them together and stated, well, let's go over and take the land and Bob's your uncle. I've heard that expression over the last little while. I had to throw it in. I heard it from Uni a few weeks ago. And I heard it over the last while, so I had to look it up. What is Bob's your uncle? Where's the origin of Bob's your uncle? So here it is. In 1887, Mike, you remember that? Thank you very much. British Prime Minister Robert Gaston Cecil appointed his nephew, Arthur Balfour, as the Minister for Ireland. Now, in essence, what happened is that Arthur's friends and family asked him how he merited such an appointment. And in essence, he replied, well, basically, it's easy when Bob's your uncle. There you go, right there. And it sort of caught on.
Bob's your uncle. Nice.
The reality is, it wasn't going to be easy. And unless the people were willing to commit to each other, to the tasks that lay before them, and first and foremost commit themselves to God, this was never going to happen. And so Joshua, as their leader, and the elders that were with Joshua, called the people to make a decision and commit themselves to God. And Joshua and the elders were willing to set the example. Judy read that for us. And the last words that she read states this, verse 31, chapter 24. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything that God had done for Israel. There was an impact there because of the example that Joshua and the elders had set for the people. And they followed faithfully when Joshua was around and when the elders were around as well too. They followed them faithfully because of the example. You see, it all starts with a commitment. You've heard the expression, family first. It's not an easy expression. Even among our physical families, it's not an easy thing to fulfill. It requires a lot of commitment. And commitment has been defined as that which binds us together. A deep sense of commitment to others comes only when we put God first and when we commit our lives to Him first and foremost. Even if you say, I love my spouse with all my heart, I love my children with all my heart, I love my friends, we cannot maintain the level of commitment that is needed to enable us to think of the best interests of other people without first being committed to God. In Mark chapter 12, verses 29 and 30, we hear the words of Jesus. Jesus has been asked this question, what is the most important commandment? And he quotes from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. And he says, the most important one, Jesus answered, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. You sang about that earlier on. It was a great song. I was amazed too. You did wonderfully. I was concerned about you. It looked like you were sort of getting to the end of your breath, but you kept going. You with such energy and such vigor, and you really blessed us. This is the most important thing. This is the key. Several times in my own life, I've been asked this question, and that's going to come up, I'm using a sermon from my life, and this is something that I read the other day. One of my friends had this on his pastor, and he had it on his t-shirt. Warning, anything that you do or say can be used in one of my sermons. It's fair warning, it's out there now, you know it. So sometimes in my life I've been asked this question. By people that I love, I cherish, I'd be willing to lay down my life for them. And they ask me this question. Who do you love the most? And you know what they're doing when they ask that question, right? Or, who's your favorite? And you know what they're doing when they ask. They're looking at you and they want to hear from you. It's you I love the most. And both times, or all of the times, when I've answered this question, I knew that they would be hurt initially because I wasn't giving them the answer they wanted. I knew that they'd come to understand the answer that I gave them. And I would tell them, I love God most. I favor no one above another. You see, when I love God most, God gives me the ability to love others best. And I use that deliberately. When I love God most, God helps me to love others best. To give my best. To do what is best for them. God enables me to do that. And so I'm going to break into another joke. I found this joke the other day. I just had to share it. Because it's a joke about an older man. So the young man is, the young son is talking to his older father. And he looks at his father and he says, I don't think you even know what a hard drive is. And the father looks to the son and he says this, I have driven across this country with you kids and the dog. I know what a hard drive is. So I had to put that in there. He had the same t-shirt. Getting back to this. And it's up there. Unless we love God more than we love and care for others, we cannot love them as they need us to love them. We will not be ready to do what is best for them because our reactions will be geared towards responding to the immediate needs and desires instead of considering their long-term benefits. You know, counselors maintain professional boundaries in order to remain objective and to genuinely be able to provide assistance. For example, as counselors, they're taught to use empathy rather than sympathy. Now, a lot of people say, I would rather have your sympathy, but it's better to have my empathy. You see, because sympathy lets me understand your situations from my own perspective and my feelings. And I feel bad for you because that's my feeling. Empathy, on the other hand, tells me to put myself in your shoes and to try to understand things from your perspective, from how you're feeling about this. So in that sense, empathy goes deeper than sympathy. It helps us to share in the sorrows and the pains of others with a goal of helping them find ways to cope. So empathy is doing something instead of just feeling pity. Well, putting God first enables us to love others best. And here's a question to consider as I continue talking today. What is your heartfelt desire now toward God? What is your heartfelt desire now towards God? I can't answer that question for you, but you got to think about that. And then when you answer the first question, go to the second question. What is your heartfelt desire towards God's family. And I'm going to leave that one with you. And you think about that. See, loving God and loving others in God's family, caring for other believers, working together to accomplish God's purpose here on earth, it all takes commitment, because it's not easy. And first and foremost, we are committed to who?
Lord.
To the Lord. Committed to God first. That's the glue that holds families together. Let me give you a couple of thoughts about how we can increase this commitment. First, we look at emotional bonding. That is, in as much as it is possible, we're available. We're available when people need us. I remember the story my son-in-law told me a while ago. He was driving back in a blizzard. And one of the things I've learned since being in Manitoba is there's nothing like a prairie blizzard. He said, I'm driving back in a blizzard. And he said he had his big work truck with a large boom on it. And he's driving along the highway from Portage back to Winnipeg. And he said it took him over 2 hours to get home. And that was for several reasons. He said because every time he saw somebody stuck in the ditch, he would pull over. And he would use his boom and he would pull them out. And then he said after he pulled them out, they would get in behind him and they wouldn't get ahead of him. They'd stay behind him because they couldn't see. And he said, well, I guess they thought I could see, but I couldn't see anything either. But I'm big. He said, so we're all good. He said every time, he said it was over 10 times, he pulled over to help somebody out of the ditch. And he said the whole line of cars would pull over with him. And he'd help them out, and then they'd all go ahead as this big long convoy that kept growing and growing. He said after a few cars, he said instead of knocking on their window and asking them if they wanted, he said I just run over and go, here it is, I'm going to pull you out, and that was it. He was available. He's telling the story about how he made a difference in people's lives and how they were grateful for it. In as much as it is possible, be available to people. And it helps to grow and connect emotionally. Mental bonding. To be willing to share experiences together. Oh, what an experience we've had over the last few years. And we've been discouraged from sharing together. But we need to share together. Mental bonding. Acts chapter 2, verse 42, it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. And then spiritual bonding. Pray for one another. Now, when you pray for another person, does that mean that they agree with everything that you agree with? That they think the exact same way that you think?
No.
Or you're praying for them because they have a need?
Yeah.
They have a need. Pray for one another. Be willing to share those spiritual joys and struggles together. Learn together. Teach and admonishing one another in love with the wisdom of God. Cell groups is a good place to start, right? Colossians chapter 3 and verse 16. Let the message of Christ in all its richness fill your lives. Teach and counsel each other with all the wisdom He gives, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God with thankful hearts. I was thinking about this. If we were to create a mission statement about the family of God, this is my thoughts around that. Our mission in the body of Christ is to promote faith and hope in God as we grow as together, as together we face life's journey. I'm sorry, I got it all on. You read it for yourself, okay? Because I can't read it this morning. I thought it would be a nice way of just summing it up. As together we face life's journey. Growing in commitment. We can grow in commitment when we show appreciation to one another. I was grateful the other day, Jake and Martha were here, and they were leaving to go to Winnipeg. And before they left, they were sanitizing the whole place down. Really appreciated that very much. And you know that Alex came over and single-handedly, with his bare hands, he dug a path from the back here all the way around to the parking lot. Well, maybe not with his bare hands, but he was here. And he did that for us, and we're grateful for it as well, too. Show appreciation. You know that when we show appreciation, it builds up their self-confidence in a positive way. And when we build self-confidence in a positive way, and yet Alex really built up those finger muscles as he was digging the snow with his bare hands. When we build self-confidence in people, it helps them to face the challenges that they have to face because they start believing that they can do this through God. It builds security in them. And there's an acronym for the word secure. Spend time together. Express honest, positive thoughts. Give constructive feedback. Be consistent. You see, inconsistency causes confusion. Be united, especially during a crisis. While the world is trying to pull everybody apart, we should be working hard to pull people back together. Recognize each other and acknowledge each other's value and encourage others daily. Tell them how important they are. I read this statistic the other day. I love statistics. 90% of the people who are in prison today remember how their parents told them that they were bad and that someday they would end up in prison. Sometimes we can be a prophet of our child's future fate. I was reading this too about dysfunctional families. Dysfunctional families create a toxic and selfish atmosphere. And they do this by dismissing other people's individual intellectually and emotionally. We dismiss their thoughts, we dismiss their emotions. Intellectual dismissal. You're wrong. I'm right. Emotional dismissal. You're faulty. You see, it goes down the next step. Not only are you wrong, but you're faulty in your way of thinking. But on the other hand, functional families encourage individuals spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually to help them to grow. A functional family allows a person to show their individuality within that biblical context. And then growing in commitment, we do this by encouraging communication. Communication is the glue that holds people together. I was reading this statistic just the other day. On average, a husband and wife, after 10 years of marriage, spend approximately 37 minutes a week talking.
Wow.
That's approximately 3 hours a month, or 0.003 of their time is spent communicating. That's real commitment. And on top of this, the communication barely goes past sharing of facts and not feelings. Do we encourage communication among friends and among Christians? How do we encourage it? I'll give you 2 simple thoughts around that. Number 1, it's written up there. Be open-minded. Allow for differences of opinion. We don't always have to agree on things to talk. As a matter of fact, it makes it more interesting. If we don't always agree on things, we can have some interesting conversations, but be open-minded. And listen. Listen to what they have to say. And listen not just to the words, but listen to the feelings. Listen to the heart. I've been hearing this comment an awful lot. I'm so tired of listening to others. I'm fed up. See, that's when we stop dialogue right there. You have to listen to people. In 1992, on April 29th, and I know that you were around uni for that. Mike was around for the Prime Minister of England. 1992, April 29th. Does anyone remember the date? The riots broke out in LA County, California. What caused these riots was 4 police officers were found not guilty for assaulting 3 African American men on the Foothill Highway freeway, California. The assault was nearly deadly, but the riot lasted 5 days and 62 people were killed. 2,383 people were injured. Now, some people would remember the name of Rodney King. Rodney King was no saint, and neither did he pretend to be a saint. But nonetheless, they put Rodney on live TV. And he's remembered for this simple statement: can't we all just get along? You see, Rodney and his friends were pulled over. And like I said, he wasn't a saint. He said this of himself: some people think I'm some kind of a hero. Others hate me. They say I deserved it. Others mock me for calling an end to the destruction, like I'm a fool for believing in peace. That's the thing I want us to focus on. Like I'm a fool for believing in peace. Mother Teresa, when she received her Nobel Peace Prize, was asked, what can we do as people to promote peace? You know what her answer was? Go home and love your family.
Yeah.
Go home and love your family. That's where it begins right there. Go home and love your family. Go home and love your church family. And Jesus said of that in chapter 5 and verse 9 of Matthew, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called what? Children of God. You see the connection? You see, when problems and disagreements come, we as Christians following the Lord, we're called to pull together. We don't have to agree with each other, but we still have to pull together to find ways to encourage each other to follow God. And we do this by relying on the strength that God gives us, and we find this strength when we are fully committed to God. Comes full circle all the way around. Jesus was sent into a world that was filled with conflict and hate, because it needed to be reminded that the most important thing in life is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. In Jesus' own prayer in John chapter 17, and Judy, thank you for sharing that earlier on. The summation of it, if I dare give it, is so that they may be brought into complete unity, and then the world will know that you sent me. You see the connection there? The unity that the world sees is a testimony that Jesus came. And we bear that witness in our lives. Eusebius, remember Eusebius? Those who were here last week? Jerome, who wrote the Vulgate. Mike, you were not around for that one there. In the 4th century, he wrote this about the church. You see, there was an epidemic that was taking place, and this epidemic was bringing great famine and a lot of death. And he tells us about the 4th century church and how it reached out together to help other people. This is what he says. All day long, Christians tended to the dying and to the dead, countless numbers, with no one to care for them. They gathered together from all parts of the city, a multitude of those who were withered from famine, and distributed bread to them all. As a result, Jerome concludes, the Christians' deeds were on everybody's lips, and they glorified the God of the Christians. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? We as Christians are called once again to unite and to bless this troubled world. To unite and to show the example. We are called to live and to love sacrificially. For as in the day of Joshua, we cannot do this without putting God first and foremost in our lives. Here's two quotes I'll close with. One is from Ed Stetzer. At a time of partisanship and of politicalization, the gospel gives us only one condition. Love God, love one another. quote from Paul the Apostle in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you fulfill the law of God.